Hello, my name is Grace Robinson and this is my e-learning portfolio. The very first page here is my home page where I have a picture of myself and then my story and my educational and career journey and goals. Obviously, I hope you take the time to read this to learn a little bit more about me and my journey, but for a quick summary, I started USF here in 2021. I graduated with my bachelor's at USF in the spring of 2023 in elementary education, and I moved on to continue my education at USF, and I joined the master's program of e-learning design and development. If you want to learn a little bit more about why I made this choice, you can go ahead and read for yourself. I'm currently a kindergarten teacher and I'm so excited to see where this program will take me. Alright, once you're finished reading about me, we have a little quote about education that I love here at the bottom. If you go on back to the top, we have my standards tab. The first tab here just shows all of the AECT standards. Every single standard just in one area, so they're easy to look at and see across. We'll go ahead and jump right into Standard 1. The very first artifact I have for Standard 1 is showing a Canvas course that I created with a group. The Canvas course was created to help teach educators about how to make a more inclusive virtual classroom environment, specifically for students with ODD and ADHD. For this course, not only did we have to collaborate together to each create a module and to create assessments, good learning opportunities, and to make sure that the educators taking this course will meet the standards, but we also had to follow grounded approaches to learning based off research. We used Moore's model of instruction and Mayer's multimedia design principles to help create this course. We used all that we learned in this course to help us create a course that will help other educators. We used things like PowerPoint, Canva, PBS simulators, and Canvas, of course. The second artifact that I use is for Standard 1.2, and it was for an assignment where we had to pick an educational app and analyze and use it, and also use it in a setting. So I picked the app of Kahoot. It's a very popular, almost like a trivia game app that a lot of educators use to help assess their students, but in a fun, more gamified way. Not only did I actually use the app and engage in a trivia, it's algebra, but we created here a brief overview and analysis of the app. In the analysis, we went over things like if it was engaging, if the content aligns with the instructional goals, if it was accessible, and if it improves student motivation. That's all analyzed here in my link that you can click and open. The next standard is Standard 1.3, and it was mostly focusing on assessing and evaluating. For this artifact, we had to pick 2 online educational games. So I picked a Sid the Science Kid sorting game and a Pavlov's Dog's drool game. Don't ask, I just found it online somewhere. Basically, we had to play these games and analyze it and assess it based on a certain amount of criteria. As we were playing the games, we were checking to see if the instructional goal was mentioned before the game, how the instructional goal was assessed, and if you were able to meet that goal after playing the game. We analyzed what the different engagement strategies they used in the game, the adaptability, and the feedback quality. I have some screenshots here of both games that I played, as well as the analysis right here in a linked tab. Now we are on to Standard number 2. The first artifact for Standard 2 was showing Standard 2.1. For this, I have showed a YouTube video of a course that I created using Rise 360. It was a group project that I was leading, and this YouTube video here is just kind of an overview of the course. It's showing the objectives, what the learner will learn, and some screenshots of the simulation type activities, real life application, assessments, and what the goals were and things like that. This standard was showing that we can demonstrate basically creating or designing a product based on learning principles and research-based practices. Just like for the last standard or the artifact, we used a lot of research-based practices like Myers Multimedia Design Principle. That one pops up a lot. Moore's and other kind of research that we've learned. We did constructivist learning theories that emphasize the relevance and the reflection in our course that we created. We wanted to make it visually engaging, so we added lots of imagery and tried to shy away from lecture style. We used PowerPoints and YouTube videos throughout the course to keep it a little bit more engaging and fun. And we took all of these ideas from the research that we've done as a group, and that's kind of listed in that video there as well. The next standard I have an artifact for is standard 2.2, which is usage, and basically for this one I am sharing an infographic we made basically showing the history of digital education. This standard talks all about integrating instructional technologies and systems into instructional design. I made a design here of the digital education history using what I learned throughout the course. So I used Canva to help me visually show the history of digital education in a little bit more fun. The timeline includes things like key events, technology shifts, and pedagogy. I used lots of images, concise text so it's not overwhelming, and it's an easy to follow chronological flow. This class focused a lot on Moore's exploration of correspondence to online distance education. I also referenced Anderson and Drawn's discussion of pedagogical paradigms like cognitive behaviorists, constructivists, and connectivists. I used all of these theories and ideas, as well as technology tools like Canva and multimedia and things like that to help create that image. The last artifact I have for standard 2 mentions standard 2.5, which is ethics. I chose the class motivational strategies, and we had to do a reflection paper and talk about different motivational strategies and how we would use them in our own learning environment. So obviously, like I mentioned before, I am a kindergarten teacher, and sometimes motivating a lot of 5-year-olds is a little bit challenging. So basically throughout the course I was researching and collecting data to help create this paper here talking about different motivational strategies and interventions that I found and that I have researched and I think that would be really effective in my classroom, and basically that paper is talking about that. And then I also have a YouTube video linked where it is a PowerPoint presentation kind of breaking down what I did in that paper in an easier to follow format. Obviously, every student is diverse. Every student has their own needs, and basically I used what I learned through research and how I can apply different motivational strategies virtually into my classroom, and I demonstrated that here through that paper in this video. Now we're on to standard 3. The first artifact here I have for standard 3 is for standard 3.1. For our class, we had to make a storyline course, mini course, talking about one of Mayer's principles. I chose to do Mayer's pre-training principle, which emphasizes the importance of introducing key concepts and vocabulary before diving into the complex instructions. This YouTube video here kind of shows my course and the layout of the course, and it shows that I started off the course by incorporating this pre-training principle. I also incorporated some other principles also by Mayers, but the pre-training was the one I was focusing on and teaching other educators. As you go through the course, we talk about the importance of this principle and why it's taught. It talks about how this principle is important. It's backed by research, and I use that research to help me build a course that educators can learn from the best way they can. My next artifact is looping it back to the motivational strategies paper and video here. This artifact talks a lot about making professionally sound decisions and using appropriate processes and theories and things like that. And so that is kind of, again, what this paper and this video is talking about. Based on the research I've learned in this course and the research I did collecting data and information and gathering it all in a paper, I made a professional decision to pick a few motivational and intervention strategies that will help the education of my students. And so I took directly what I learned and I'm using it to help my students learn better. The last artifact for Standard 3 is for Standard 3.4, which is managing. The standard is all about establishing mechanisms and for maintaining technology infrastructure to help improve learning and performance. For my web design class, we had to make a web page using an accordion style menu that helps teach about a topic. Now, if you look over at the website here, you can see the topic is a little bit silly. It's on my favorite game of all times, which is The Sims. And although it may not seem that educational, not everything has to be educational. I'm sure there are plenty and plenty of people out there in the world that want to learn a little bit more about the game and want to learn how to play, how to have access to the game. So it's incorporating my interests and my experiences, and I decided to use that and connect it with what I've learned about creating technology pieces and created a web page where people can learn from it, right? So you can go onto it. The accordion style menu works. They can click on it. It opens it up and gives them more information. And so that kind of shows that I'm using and creating this technology, maintaining that CSS and JavaScript and HTML files to create a learning environment for others. All right, we are now on to Standard 4. The first standard we'll be going over is Standard 4.1, Collaboration. The artifact I have for that is my course on ADHD and ODD that I created with a few group members via Canvas. We had to work together to create this course. Each of us were in charge of one module of the course, but we were constantly communicating because we wanted our course to be seamless and to have a common theme throughout and a common and consistent structure throughout the course. So we are constantly collaborating, lots of meetings, and analyzing each other's modules to really make a course that flowed very nicely. So that way teachers can learn about ADHD and ODD and how to properly teach that. Again, we used lots of Mayer's multimedia design principles as well as Moore's theory of interaction to help better our course. The next artifact matches Standard 4.2, which is leadership. For my online Rise 360 course, we made a course on AI literacy, basically teaching educators about AI, bias in AI, and how to make ethical decisions while using AI in an educational setting. For this course, we used Rise 360 mainly, and we used a couple other tools as well, but that was the main one. I was the project manager of this course, and I was in charge of leading my team, communication between our professor as well as our team, translating feedback from our professor, future steps, goals, deadlines, things like that. I consistently provided updates, and I had to make sure that the group was accountable for their portion of the work. That shows that I was able to lead my team members into creating this awesome course that educators can use. The last standard and artifact for standard number 4 is for 4.3, which is reflection. We had to do a final paper for my distance learning course. The final paper, we had to analyze our learning experience throughout the course and design a collaborative mini course, which is the ADHD course mentioned earlier. Basically for this, I explored the history, the theories, and key principles of learning, especially distance learning, from what I've learned throughout the semester. I talked about the different type of learner interactions, what I've learned from that, and how I can change my practice based on what I've learned. And this entire paper is talking about what I've learned and how I can improve my educational practice, especially when it comes to distance learning and digital learning. So if you want to take a look at that, you can go ahead and open up this file and see what I've learned. We are finally here on standard number 5. The first piece of standard number 5 is bringing it back to that distance learning paper that I wrote. Standard 5.1 talks about designing instructional systems and learning environments based on research, theories, and practice. We had to do an independent study, I talked a lot about independent study theory and Moore's theory of interaction, learner content, learner, and learner instructor. Basically, I took everything that I learned, all the theories and research that I learned, compiled it into the paper like I mentioned before, and really reflected on it. I even talked about how I would use this in my own educational practices, and I'm using what I've learned from the theories and principles and learning and how I'm going to apply it based on research. The next is a file here about a paper that we created, which is a baccalaureate follow-up study. It was a group project where we had to analyze data and compile research and data together. We had to go through a process of finding a problem as a group, discussing why it's important, finding data, doing our own research, and then compiling that all together to create a conclusion. Our group members made a paper talking about the rate of students after receiving their bachelor degree and if they were able to find a job within 1, 5, and 10 years post-graduation. We analyzed heaps and heaps of data. We made charts and wrote down all of our findings of the numbers that we learned. We compiled it. We sized it all. And then at the end, we were able to conclude something, and we shared that here in the file. We used research methodologies to help solve the problem of wondering if students were able to find jobs after their graduation. Once you're finished looking at all of my artifacts and standards, you can head up to the reflection tab. This tab basically just shares my reflection, not only about completing my e-learning portfolio, what I've learned from, what I would do differently if I were to do it again, and what I'm proud of, but I also talk about my reflection of this program as a whole. I have grown so much and I have learned a lot, but one thing about learning is you never stop learning. Even though I'm near the end of my program here, there's still so much I want to learn and explore, and hope I can continue to do so. The final tab will be for this lovely video here. Thank you all so much for taking the time to look through my portfolio and really just learning about my journey as an educator and as a creator here. Bye, y'all.